Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, or as we like to say here at Shady Acres Woodshop, howdy! Well, I thought we'd start the new year off with a piece of what I like to call junk wood. I've turned 3 other pieces. They're on the channel. They're all titled junk wood, 1, 2, 3, or whatever they are, I don't know. And it's a common wood that grows here like a weed. I have no idea what it is. It can have some really pretty colors in it. It absolutely has tons of bug holes. Lots of bug holes everywhere you look, bug holes. But it also has some spalting and, like I say, pretty colors. So what better way to start off 2019 than a piece of junk wood? I'll get this mounted up on the lathe and we're going to turn some kind of natural edge bowl. Stand by. I have the piece mounted up on the woodworm screw with tailstock support. The piece is about 9.5 by 9.5 by about 4 inches thick, but it is thicker on this end than it is the other. So I can only get it up to about 500 RPM. I'm going to get my mask and face shield on. I have my 5/8 inch bowl gouge all freshly sharpened up, and we're going to get to turning. About 1200 RPM. Okay, let's flatten the bottom off. Put a tenon on here. Then switch to a 1/2 inch bowl gouge. Now I'm going to use this diamond point tool to straighten the sides on my tenon. And I'm going to sharpen up and take one more pass up the side, try and smooth that out a little bit. And we are ready for sanding. You know, these voids, these defects are really common in this wood. And this one, these deep holes come through here almost. Well, I think they do come through. And this corresponds with a big knot up in the top that you can't see, along with a myriad of bug holes, tons of bug holes. So that's just typical. That's just the way this wood is. A little punky here, but not bad. It will, however, sand up and finish quite nicely. So I'm going to start sanding with my 2-inch sanding disc at 120 grit and work up through 400, and then we'll come back and apply some Howard feed and wax. Now when I sand, I think I probably sand a little bit differently than a lot of folks. First of all, I'm particular about it. This is what you're going to feel when you pick up the piece, and I think it's important that it feel good in your hand. And so I vacuum between every grit. I use compressed air between every grit. So this is clean as a whistle. It takes a lot longer probably. I doubt if I ever spend less than an hour sanding a piece. And this piece was no exception. This is a fairly soft wood, so it's fairly easy to sand. However, all of these defects make it show up as if you missed a spot. So you go over it and over it and over it and over it, only to find out that the line that you thought you missed is just a bug hole or some other defect, like this knot hole. And it just takes time, that's all. But when you pick this up, it's smooth. It feels good in your hand. And so I just think it's worth the time. And I get that comment all the time. People pick something up and say, wow, how'd you get that so smooth? Time and effort. And I also go through 9 grits. I don't skip any grits. I usually start at 80 grit. On this one I started at 120 because it was pretty good. But I usually start 80, 100, 120, 150, 180, 220, 320, 400. I think that's 9, 8, whatever it is. And it just really makes the difference. And then when I have all these bug holes like this, I'll take a brush and I'll brush finish into each and every one of them. And the reason I do that is so that the color matches. I don't want the light color of the bug hole standing out from the main color of the body of the piece. And that takes time as well, but it really makes quite a difference. And I'm glad I do it. And it's those little details that just make the difference, I think. It's not particularly fun. Who likes doing this part? You know, I'd rather be tearing into it with a chisel in my hand, but it's necessary. So I'll get this finished up, come back out in about a half hour and buff it up, and then it'll be time to turn it around and start working on the inside. So don't go anywhere. Okay, the finish is all done. I've got the piece turned around and mounted in the chuck on the tenon, and here's what we've got to deal with. We've got this big branch coming out of here, and that corresponds to a knot hole that we see down on the outside. And I've got my 5/8 inch bowl gouge all sharpened up. I'm going to get my mask and face shield on, and I'm excited to hollow out this bowl. Turning at 1200 RPM. See all that dust flying around? It's dusty wood. What I think that is, I think that's bug residue floating around. I don't know why else it would be so dusty, because Lord knows, look at all the bug holes. I mean, this thing's more bug holes than it is wood, but that's pretty cool. We'll just keep chipping away at it. I want to kind of smooth the side out as I work my way down. I've gotten it fairly thin and I don't want it flexing on me, so I'll be turning the gouge this way and doing some pull scraping on the side as I go, about an inch at a time probably. Yep, that's good. Wow, just dust, huh? Just dusty. Can't quite get in there, but I think I'm about a 1/2 inch. With that big hole there, well, it's a hole. Not much I can do about it, I guess. Starting to sound a little thin. That's because of that defect, but I think we're there. Yeah, we're about 1/4 inch. About 3/16 maybe, 1/8 inch on the sides. I can't quite get that corner. I don't have a bottom feeder gouge, so I think I'm going to scrape that. I think we're ready for sanding. Well, I think I'm going to have to do something about this hole. The bowl would be basically useless the way it is. I don't generally fill voids and whatnot. I just let them show through, but since it's in the very bottom, I have no idea what anyone might ever do with this. But I wouldn't want things to get down in there and get caught and couldn't come out. And I don't want these pieces to break up in here. So I'm going to get some coffee grounds, I guess, and some CA glue and fill that up. And the only way I can see to do it is to take it off of the lathe and do it in an upright position. So I've marked the spot on the tenon where the chuck grabs it, so that I can put it back the way it is. I'm going to tape up the bottom, the other side of this hole. I don't know, you probably can't tell that it goes all the way through, but it does. So I'm going to tape that up, work from the top side, put some coffee grounds in there, tamp it really well, put some CA on it, more coffee grounds, more CA, tamp it really well until I can get that void filled up. I'm not going to fill the bug holes, I never do. I prefer just to leave them unless they're huge, and they're not. So that's what I'm going to be working on for a little while. Well, I thought I'd give you a glimpse of what I'm going to do. I'm not going to show the whole thing, but instead of coffee grounds, I knew I had some dark powdery type shavings from, I think it's walnut. So I'm going to use that instead of coffee grounds. So that's what I'm going to be doing for a while. And now I'm holding my fingers so it all doesn't come through. My fingers will probably stick to the tape or something. Who knows? The reason I marked the tenon again is because I'm going to have to return this. Well, here's what I have. A mess. So I'm going to take my 1/2 inch standard grind bowl gouge and see if I can get in there and clean that up. And I'm not so sure those were walnut chips that I put in there. I kind of think it's cherry. When I turned an end grain cherry bowl, I think I picked up some small chips. Yeah, that'll do. I'm gonna scrape it a little bit. Yep, that'll do. Finally, time for sanding. Well, it's going to be kind of a bumpy ride with these two little wings out there. I'm starting at 80 grit on my 2-inch disc sander. I'll work up through 400 grit, and I'll bring you back when it's time to put some finish on the inside. See you in a bit. Like I said, more bug holes than wood in this piece, and that contributed to a little longer sanding time, because you just can't tell what's a bug hole and what's a missed sanding opportunity. My patch down here looks like, if anything, a bark inclusion. So that's kind of cool. I think that is cherry, so the color blends in pretty well with the pinkishness of this wood. Well, it's looking better than I thought it would. And then just like on the outside, I'm going to take my brush and dip it in this bottle of Howard feed and wax and force some of this finished material into the bug holes. That'll even out the color. So I'll be working at this for a little bit, and I'll bring you back here when it's time to remove that tenon. Oh, plus I have just a tiny bit more work to do. I'll show you that in a little bit. Okay, we are ready to take off that tenon. So I've got my block of wood in here with a non-slip face on it, and that'll serve as a friction drive. And I'll just bring up the tailstock. I still have my center hole for reference. Bring up the tool rest, and you can see the little problem I have here. A little bit of blue tape stuck from the CA bleeding through, so that's stuck on there. I'm going to have to, besides removing this, I'm going to have to remove that, and I'll just use a 3/8 inch standard grind bowl gouge for both of those tasks. See what it's like when we spin it up. It'll probably be okay. So I'm going to turn it about 600 RPM and just work away that tenon. Got it. Alright. Now I just hope there's enough thickness there to support my cut. Back to working on the tenon. I'm just checking to see if I should sand on the lathe or off like I generally do. I think I'm going to sand on the lathe. It's a pretty large area and I want to blend it well. So I'll bring you back just before I take the rest of that tenon off. I'll do a little sanding. See you in a minute. I'm trying to get this done before the power goes off. The wind's blowing about 40 miles an hour out there, which is kind of fun at this place with all our trees. I've switched to a swept back gouge so that I can get in here a little tighter. I'm still about 550 RPM. I'm just clearing out room so the gouge can get in there and make the final cut. I think we're there. So I'm going to slow the speed down to about 200. And if your lathe doesn't go down to 200, I'm not sure I would do this maneuver. I've done it faster and it's not always successful. What I'm doing now is I'm placing the bevel of the gouge against the bottom of the bowl with pressure towards the headstock. And I'm going to put my right hand on the gouge and my left hand on the switch. And as soon as that little nub stops turning, then we'll know we're through. And I do this because I'm kind of lazy. It's just easier than chipping away with a chisel or whatever it is you want to do. And so that just leaves a little area here to sand, and I'll do that over here on the workbench. Well, there it is. One junk wood, or shall we call it mystery wood? because I just don't know what it is. One junk wood, one mystery wood bowl in the books. You ever seen that many bug holes? I have, but only in this same kind of wood. It's very, very lightweight. Doesn't weigh anything. Has some pretty cool spalting along here. The shape is okay, not great. Bottom finished up well. I did put mystery wood on the bottom. I wouldn't want to insult anyone that might end up with this if anyone ever wants it. But it turned out alright. See, that looks like a bark inclusion in there, doesn't it? That's what I think of it as. If I look at this again in 10 years and forget what I did, I'm sure they'll say, oh, that one's got a bark inclusion. If you like this video, thumbs up please, I'd sure appreciate it. If you're a subscriber, I truly appreciate that. Thank you very kindly. If you're not a subscriber, you might consider becoming one. I put out regular videos about one a week, and I'd like to keep in touch. So for now, this is Phil, Shady Acres Woodshop, signing off.